Hi, you're watching Helen Explains Me and White Supremacy by Layla F. Saad. So, day 3, you and tone policing. Now, if you haven't watched my introduction video, then please do so. Click up here, I'll link to it up here, and I'll also link to it down in the description. I really recommend you watch that one first before you get into this one, because I'm going to just jump straight in. I'm not going to give you really any introduction because that video says it all. And this week in part 1, we're going to be covering the basics. So that includes you and white privilege, you and white fragility, you and tone policing, you and white silence, you and white superiority, and you and white exceptionalism. Now, if some of these terms don't ring a bell, then that's absolutely fine, because we're going to be going through them. I'm going to give you a bit of definition, and I'm going to read some extracts from the book, and then also look at the questions that Layla suggests you reflect on. And even if these terms are really familiar to you, then it's always worth going over something again, and you might learn something new, as Layla's take is really direct, really well thought out and explained, and just fantastic in helping you understand how these fit into the overall overarching white supremacy. So, day 3, you and tone policing. Now, first of all, what is tone policing? Tone policing is a tactic used by those who have privilege to silence those who do not, by focusing on the tone of what is being said rather than the actual content. A white person's expression of anger is often seen as righteous, whereas a black person's anger is often seen as aggressive and dangerous. Black women are especially susceptible to this, because they are automatically dismissed as an angry black woman, just because, or an aggressive black woman, or someone who shouldn't be listened to because of the way they're saying it. Nowhere is this illustrated more clearly than with the on-court and off-court treatment of tennis star Serena Williams. Over the years, Williams has been compared to a gorilla, experienced extra unnecessary drug tests, and had her outfits policed. During her 2018 US Open final match against Naomi Osaka, Williams was called out on for a number of violations that confused both her and the crowd. One of these charges was for verbal abuse after she called the umpire a thief. In a Newsweek article, Crystal Fleming, an associate professor in sociology and Africana studies at Stony Brook University, writes, "Watching the greatest player of all time get tone policed by a petty man abusing his power was both heartbreaking and infuriating, especially as a black woman." Male players like James Blake and John McEnroe have come forward to affirm that they have said much worse to chair umpires without being penalised or fined. So right there, you have that intersectionality of racism and sexism towards Serena Williams. She is being hit from both sides because she's a black woman. So how does it show up? What is it exactly? Layla really invites you to think about whether you've said any of these following things. I wish you would say what you're saying in a nicer way. I can't take in what you're telling me about your lived experiences because you sound too angry. Your tone is too aggressive. The language you are using to talk about your lived experiences is making me feel ashamed. You should address white people in a more civil way if you want to join your cause, if you want us to join your cause. The way you are talking about this issue is not productive. If you would just calm down, then maybe I would want to listen to you. You are bringing too much negativity into this space, and you should focus on the positive. These are just awful, awful things. You're just completely diminishing what someone's saying because of the way they're saying it. And something like racism people are gonna get angry. People are gonna be want to be expressive, and if you immediately dismiss them just because they're not saying it nicely, then how are we gonna get any further? It's so demeaning. I've seen this from a sexist point of view when men talk to women, but here it's white people talking to black people. It's white people not being willing to listen because of the way things are being said. It's so important because tone policing reinforces white supremacist norms of how BIPOC are supposed to show up. It's so important because she says when you can understand how you tone police, you can begin to change your behaviour so that you can allow BIPOC the full expression of their humanity. So the reflective journaling prompts for day 3: how have you used tone policing to out loud to silence, shut down or dismiss BIPOC? What kind of words have you used to describe what tone a BIPOC should use? What tone policing thoughts have you harboured inside when you heard BIPOC talk about race or their lived experiences, even if you didn't say them out loud? So that's a really interesting one, because it makes you think about what you've actually thought, and if you ever thought about something like that, because you may well have, and you know, we're all guilty of it, but it's the reason why this is so important is you need to recognise that if that ever happens again, you can be like, that's tone policing, I need to not do that because that's what happens there, so I'll correct that behaviour and move forward, become a better person. It's all about taking that accountability for your thoughts and for your actions. How have you derailed conversations about race by focusing on how someone has said something to you rather than what they have said to you? Have you often made your willingness to engage in anti-racism work conditional on people using the right tone with you? Like, that's just stupid. It's just like, oh, well, you have to do X, Y, Z before I'm even going to engage with you. Like, come on. Stop centering yourself. Have you discounted BIPOC's real pain over racism because of the way they talk about it doesn't fit with your worldview of how people should talk? Again, your worldview shouldn't be centered. Like, that's your point of view, but people have other worldviews, so just get out of your head already. How have you discounted BIPOC in general because of the tone they use when they talk?